Adding fractions. Okay, let's start off with an example. Here I've got 1 bar and it's been split into 6 equal pieces. So each little piece is 1/6. And over here I've got another bar. This could be a bar of chocolate or something. And again, it's been split into 6 equal pieces. And here I've got one of those pieces, 1/6. So if I wanted to say, well, I've taken that piece and I've taken that piece, I'm adding them together. I've got 1/6 plus 1/6. How many sixths have I got all together? Hopefully we can see fairly easily that that is equal to 2/6. And let's just have a look at what happened here. We're dealing in sixths, so our bottom numbers are the same. We've got 6 on the bottom all the time because everything's in sixths. And our top numbers, our numerators, I've got 1 here and I've got another 1 here. Add those together, that gives me 2. So my answer became 2/6. If I was to draw that, it would look like this. So that would look like here I've got 2 out of 6 altogether. So that's what our 2/6 look like. Of course, it's really important that we simplify our fractions into lowest terms. And we can see quite clearly that 2/6 is exactly the same as 1/3. Okay, so 2/6 would be the same as 1/3. And again, we could do that numerically without having to rely on the picture, because we're thinking 2/6. These are both even numbers. I can therefore divide the top and bottom by 2. So as long as I do the same to the top as I do to the bottom, it's going to be fine. 6 divided by 2 gives me the 3, and 2 divided by 2 gives me the 1. So when I was adding those fractions, that was all fairly straightforward. I had the bottom numbers the same, I added the top numbers, and then I simplified. Okay, so this time we're going to look at an example where we've got different numbers on the bottom, different denominators. So here I want to add 2/3 to 1/4. And we can see from my little diagram here, 2/3, if imagine this could be a cake or a pizza, 2/3 would be that amount there, and 1/4 would look something like that. So I can see that I'm going to end up with something, it's like fairly big, it's close to 1. That's roughly what I'm going to end up looking like when I add these two fractions together. Anyway, we need to see how to do this, because at the moment we've got a small problem in the fact that that 3 and that 4, they're different numbers, so our denominators are different, and it's very difficult to add in thirds and quarters just like that. We've got to find a good denominator that will be useful for both of those fractions. So I want to find a good denominator, one that's a common denominator, a denominator that I can use for both. So I want to find an equivalent fraction for 2/3 and an equivalent fraction for 1/4 where my bottom numbers are the same. And one way that I can achieve this is simply by multiplying that 3 by that 4, and that will give me a denominator that will work when I want to add these fractions together. So let's do that. So let's multiply 3 times 4, that gives me 12. So that's going to be my denominator for both of these fractions. So I now know that my denominator is going to be 12, and in fact 3 does go into 12 and 4 does go into 12. Of course it does, because we multiplied 3 by 4 in order to get that 12. So I now know that if I work in twelfths, I will be able to add my fractions together. But I've got to work out the equivalent fractions first of all. 2/3 is equivalent to how many twelfths? So what happened to that 3 to make it a 12? Well, I had to multiply it by 4, so I was timesing by 4. So if I times the bottom number by 4, I must do exactly the same to the top number to keep it equivalent. So 2 multiplied by 4 gives me 8. And I must then look at the other side. So here I've got my 1/4, and I'm now working in 12. So I think, what happened to that 4 to make it into 12? Well, it got multiplied by 3. So I had to times by 3. So as long as I multiply the top number by the same number as I multiply the bottom number, it's going to give me an equivalent fraction. So I multiplied the bottom number by 3 to get that 12, therefore I must multiply the top number by 3 to get me my new numerator. So 1 multiplied by 3 is 3. So now, instead of trying to think of 2/3, I'm thinking of 8/12. These are all equivalent. And instead of dealing with 1/4, I'm dealing with 3/12. 3/12 is equivalent to 1/4. You can see that my bottom numbers are the same, so now I'm actually able to add these up quite quickly, because I know that I'm going to be dealing in twelfths. 8 twelfths add 3 twelfths. 8 plus 3 is 11, so my answer is going to be 11 twelfths. And we could of course see this visually. Here, imagine this is the same circle, whether it was a cake or a pizza, whatever we wanted. This time it has been split up into the twelfths. So we had 2/3, which we said was the same as 8 twelfths. So that would look like this if I was to shade these in. So I'd have 8 of these filled in. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there I've coloured in 8 twelfths, which of course is the same as 2/3. And have a look, that bit there looks just like that bit there. And then we've got 1/4, which we said was the same as 3 twelfths. So again, I'm going to colour in 3 twelfths. So I'll colour these ones in red this time so that we can just see the difference. So there's 1/12, that's 2 twelfths, that's 3 twelfths. But if you see that there, this quarter or 3 twelfths is exactly the same as that bit there. So you see we've ended up with exactly the same. We've got now a total of 11 twelfths shaded in. And of course 11 twelfths, that is in simplest form. There are no numbers that can divide into both 11 and 12, so I leave my answer as 11 twelfths. So the golden rules that we need to remember when we're adding fractions are: get the bottom numbers the same. So to get the bottom numbers the same, you can find the common denominator by just multiplying the two different denominators together. Or if you know what the lowest common multiple is, you could use that instead. Don't forget, whatever you did to the bottom numbers, you must do the same to the top numbers to keep your fractions equivalent. Now you just add the top numbers. The denominator is the same number that it was. And then finally, don't forget to simplify your answer if it can be simplified.